He thought he had me cornered. Just a black woman in an expensive car during a routine traffic stop. He had no idea he was about to trespass into a world far beyond his badge. The hum of the flat-six engine was my own personal therapy. It was a low, guttural purr that vibrated right through the Italian leather of the driver's seat, a constant reminder of every 60-hour work week, every skipped lunch, every late-night study session that had gotten me here. My Porsche 911, a sleek bullet of midnight blue, was more than a car to me. It was a monument to my own resilience, built from the rubble of low expectations and the whispers of people who said I'd never make it. Driving through the manicured suburbs on a crisp autumn evening with the windows down and the scent of wood smoke in the air, I felt a sense of peace that was hard-earned and fiercely protected. That peace shattered into a million pieces when red and blue lights exploded in my rearview mirror. My stomach dropped. I did a quick mental checklist. I wasn't speeding. I'd used my turn signal. My registration was up to date. I was a corporate lawyer. Following rules was my entire personality. I pulled over to the side of the quiet, tree-lined street, the powerful engine idling with an impatient rumble. I killed the music, rolled my window all the way down, and placed my hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, just like my father had taught me. Be polite, be clear, no sudden moves. Give them no reason. The officer who approached my car looked like he was carved out of a block of resentment. He was thick-set, with a ruddy face and a haircut that was 10 years too young for him. He didn't walk to my window. He stomped, his hand resting on his holstered weapon. He shined his flashlight directly into my eyes, forcing me to squint. "Evening," I said, my voice steady. He ignored my greeting, his eyes raking over me, then the interior of the car, then back to me. A slow, insolent smirk spread across his face. "License and registration." His voice was a gravelly bark. "Of course, officer." I moved my right hand slowly, deliberately, toward the glove compartment. "Whoa, whoa, slow down," he snapped, his hand tightening on his weapon. "Tell me what you're doing first." My blood started to run cold. This wasn't a standard traffic stop. This was a performance. "I'm reaching for my registration and proof of insurance in the glove compartment, officer. My license is in my purse on the passenger seat." He grunted, his eyes narrowing. "Whose car is this?" The question hung in the air, thick and ugly. Not, "Is this your car?" but "Whose is it?" as if the possibility of my ownership was a statistical impossibility. "It's my car, officer." He chuckled, a short, nasty sound. "Right. Your car. And I'm sure you came by it honestly." He leaned down, his face uncomfortably close to my window. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "We've had reports of a vehicle matching this description involved in some local distribution activities. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" I felt a surge of rage, hot and sharp, but I forced it down. Losing my cool was a luxury I couldn't afford. "Officer, I'm a lawyer. I work for a firm downtown. I can assure you I have nothing to do with any distribution activities." His smirk widened into a grin. He looked me up and down again. "A lawyer, huh? Sure, sweetheart. Step out of the car." That was it. The line. "Am I being detained, officer? Are you placing me under arrest?" I said step. Out. Of the car. Now. He reached for the handle. I knew my rights. I also knew that sometimes knowing your rights doesn't mean a damn thing on a dark road with a man who has a badge and a gun. I took a deep breath, unbuckled my seatbelt, and opened the door. The moment I was on my feet, he grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my bicep like claws, and slammed me against the cold metal of my own car. The shock of it stole my breath. He twisted my arm behind my back with painful force, pressing his body against mine. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" he hissed in my ear, his voice dripping with venom. "Driving around in a car you can't possibly afford, thinking you're better than everyone. I know your type. Well, you're in my world now." Pain shot up my shoulder, and for a second panic threatened to swallow me whole. My mind was racing, cycling through 1,000 different protocols and training simulations I'd prayed I'd never have to use in my civilian life. He was sloppy, arrogant, relying on pure intimidation. He thought he had all the power. He had no idea who he had just put his hands on. As he fumbled for his handcuffs, enjoying my supposed helplessness, my free hand slipped into my jacket pocket, my thumb finding the smooth, cool surface of my phone. I pressed the side button 5 times in quick succession. It was a silent command, a digital flare sent out into the darkness, a signal that an asset was compromised and in immediate physical danger. He finally wrenched my other arm back, preparing to cuff me. He was breathing heavily, flush with his victory. "You got anything to say now, lawyer?" he sneered. I turned my head slightly, my cheek scraping against the Porsche's paint. I looked him dead in the eye, and for the first time that night, I let the ice into my voice. "Yes, actually," I said, my tone flat and devoid of all fear. "What's your name and badge number, officer?" He laughed, a triumphant, ugly sound. "Officer Miller, badge 7422. Why? You gonna file a little complaint when I'm done with you?" "No," I said calmly, as a single, discreet vibration from my phone confirmed my signal had been received. "I'm just confirming the details for your file. My handler likes to be thorough before he burns someone's life to the ground." Officer Miller's laugh died in his throat, replaced by a confused gurgle. He stared at me, the confidence draining from his face like water from a sieve, leaving behind a pasty mixture of anger and uncertainty. "Handler? What the hell are you talking about? You watch too many movies, lady." He tightened his grip on my arm, trying to reassert his dominance, but the theatricality was gone. He was just a bully who'd been caught off guard. "You'd be surprised what's on TV these days," I said, my voice still unnervingly calm. "It's getting more and more realistic." Before he could process that, a low hum filled the air, a sound that cut through the chirping of the crickets. It wasn't a police siren. It was the sound of expensive, heavy machinery moving very, very fast. Twin beams of brilliant white light washed over us, so bright they bleached the color from the world. A pair of identical blacked-out Chevy Suburbans had appeared at either end of the street, boxing us in. They hadn't raced in with sirens blaring. They had simply materialized out of the darkness, their movements silent and predatory. The doors of both vehicles opened in perfect, unnerving synchrony. 4 men emerged, 2 from each car. They were all dressed in dark, impeccably tailored suits that did little to hide the lean, muscular frames beneath. They wore no badges, no uniforms, nothing to identify them. They moved with a fluid, economical grace that screamed of training far beyond any police academy. Miller froze, his hand still gripping my arm. His head whipped back and forth between the 2 SUVs, his little kingdom of a traffic stop suddenly invaded by a foreign power. The lead man, older, with silver-flecked hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite, began walking toward us. He didn't run, he didn't shout. He just walked, and the air itself seemed to part for him. "Let her go," the man said. His voice was quiet, almost conversational, but it carried an absolute authority that made Miller flinch. "This is official police business," Miller blustered, his voice cracking. "Identify yourselves." The man didn't break stride. He stopped about 5 feet from Miller, his cold gray eyes fixed on the officer's hand clutching my arm. "You have 3 seconds to take your hand off our asset before I have one of my men break it." He glanced at his watch. 1. Miller's hand flew off my arm as if he'd been burned. I took a deliberate step away from him, rubbing my bicep where his fingers had dug in. Another agent, younger and sharper, glided to my side. He didn't touch me, but simply stood as a silent, protective barrier between me and the cop. "Ma'am," he murmured, his eyes scanning the road. "Are you compromised?" "Negative," I replied, my voice back in a familiar professional cadence. He was sloppy. "No search. My work product is secure." Miller was gaping at us, his mind visibly short-circuiting as he tried to reconcile the lawyer he'd been manhandling with the woman now speaking in quiet, coded language to a man who looked like he could kill with a paperclip. The lead agent, who I knew only as Thorne, turned his full attention to the terrified officer. "David Miller, badge 7422, Thorne said, his voice dropping a few degrees. "You live at 417 Oak Street. Your wife, Karen, thinks you're at a poker game tonight. You're 2 months behind on your mortgage, and you owe $12,000 to a bookie named Slim Jimmy for a bad bet on the Eagles. Am I missing anything?" The color drained completely from Miller's face. He looked like he was going to be sick. How do you know that?" Thorne ignored the question. He took a small step closer, invading Miller's space. "You see, Officer Miller, my colleagues and I are part of a very quiet, very specialized branch of the United States government. Our primary job is to ensure that certain projects run smoothly. Tonight, you took it upon yourself to harass a citizen during a routine traffic stop. That is a matter for your superiors and internal affairs. A problem, but a manageable one." Thorne paused, letting the silence stretch until it was screaming. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod toward me. "However," he continued, his voice a blade of ice, "the citizen you chose to harass, the woman whose arm you twisted behind her back like a common street thug, is the lead analyst on Operation Nightshade. She is a Level 4 asset with the highest security clearance this government can bestow. And tonight, you didn't just assault a citizen, Officer Miller. You interfered with a federal agent in the middle of a live counterterrorism operation." The words, "counterterrorism operation," seemed to suck all the oxygen out of the air. Miller staggered back a step, his face a mess of confusion and pure primal fear. His brain was trying to connect the dots between a routine bit of racist bullying and the sudden, terrifying specter of federal espionage. It wasn't connecting. He looked from Thorne's flinty eyes to my calm expression, and all the fight went out of him. I didn't know," he stammered, his voice a pathetic whisper. It was a traffic stop." Thorne gave a slight, dismissive wave of his hand, as if swatting away a fly. "Your ignorance is noted but irrelevant. Your actions, however, are not. You put a national security asset at risk. You jeopardized a multi-agency operation that has been in the works for 18 months. For what? To feel like a big man for a few minutes? To put a black woman in her place because she dared to own a nice car in your town?" Every word was a nail hammered into the coffin of Miller's career. He started to plead, his hands held up in a gesture of surrender. "Please, I have a family. I'll apologize. It won't happen again. I swear." "Apologies are for mistakes, officer," Thorne said coldly. "This was a choice, and choices have consequences. You won't be arrested. A trial would create paperwork, and we don't like paperwork. It's untidy." Thorne took a small device from his pocket and held it out. It was a simple audio recorder. He pressed a button. Miller's own sneering voice filled the night air. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Driving around in a car you can't possibly afford. I know your type. Well, you're in my world now." Thorne clicked it off. The silence that followed was deafening. "You're done," Thorne stated matter-of-factly. "Tomorrow morning, a letter of resignation will be on your captain's desk. You will cite personal and health reasons. You will pack up your desk, and you will walk away. Your pension will be forfeited due to a series of administrative errors we discovered regarding your file. If you ever mention this night, If you so much as whisper the word Porsche or lawyer to your wife, your bookie, or your bartender, we will know. And the problems you will face then will make losing your job feel like a paid vacation. Are we clear?" Miller could only nod, his entire body trembling. He was a ghost, a hollowed-out shell of the swaggering bully who had slammed me against my car minutes earlier. The agents from the second SUV had already retrieved my license and registration from his patrol car and were now quietly wiping down my door, erasing any trace of his presence. Thorne gave me a slight nod, a silent question. "Are we done here?" I nodded back. Then I did something he didn't expect. I walked past him, right up to the broken man who was still wearing a police uniform. He flinched as I approached, his eyes wide with terror. I stopped a foot in front of him and looked him directly in the eye. All the arrogance was gone, leaving only a desperate, pleading fear. "You asked me whose car this was," I said, my voice low and steady. "You said I was in your world now." I paused, letting him hang on the words. I gestured back at my gleaming midnight blue Porsche, at the silent men in suits who had materialized from the darkness at my command. "It's my car," I said, each word a precise, deliberate cut. "And you were never in my world. You were just trespassing." I turned my back on him without another word and walked to my 911. One of Thorne's agents held the door open for me. I slipped into the familiar comfort of the leather seat, the interior smelling faintly of my perfume, not of his stale coffee and hate. I didn't look back as the Suburbans pulled away, melting back into the night as silently as they had come, leaving Officer Miller alone on the side of the road with the ruins of his life. I started the engine. The deep, powerful hum filled the cockpit, a reassuring and familiar sound. For a moment I just sat there, my hands on the wheel, my heart rate finally beginning to slow. The sense of peace I'd felt earlier was gone, replaced by something colder, harder, but just as strong. It was the certainty of my own power, not the power of a car or a job title, but the power I had forged in the shadows, the power he had never even imagined I possessed. I put the car in gear and pulled away from the curb, the flashing lights of his abandoned cruiser shrinking in my rearview mirror, until they were just another starless patch in the darkness behind me.